Maryland just landed their biggest recruit yet.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, video content creator for 247 Sports and InsideMarylandSports.com, and host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And the Terps just landed their biggest recruit yet, and a huge bang for the 2025 class for the Maryland Terrapins. They land, I think, maybe their best recruit, yes, in that class. And I think a lot of people would argue the best recruit, yes, the biggest commitment that we have had in this 2025 class yet for the Maryland Terrapins, and a guy that I think is going to be a really good player down the road. But let's get into the player, since I know you guys are all waiting for who he is. And I know a lot of you guys already know and are just looking for more info about him. But the Terps landed Iverson Howard, which is a pretty cool name. Every time I say his name, I think of Allen Iverson for some reason. And he's a running back and he's got some Allen Iverson type of moves. I know basketball and football, not exactly the same thing, but a lot of it's comparable when you think about a basketball crossover and you think about a football juke move. And he's got some of that AI Allen Iverson in him a little bit. Definitely different types of athletes overall in terms of basketball and football, but still there's a little bit of Allen Iverson in his football game, just a tad bit. I know it's a little bit of a stretch just because of the name, but he attended Quince Orchard in Maryland, a pretty good football school. We have definitely recruited out of that school a good bit. We've missed out on a couple of really good players. I remember last year, the Harvey kid that ended up going to Penn State was out of Quince Orchard, who was a really good player, who was a 4-star. And we've definitely have recruited some guys from Quince Orchard. But in terms of our 2025 class, I think this is the biggest commit yet for Maryland football. I think there's other really good players in our 2025 class, and this is no slouch to them when I say I think this player is our best player so far, because there are some really good commits in our 2025 class that are going to go on and be impact players for Maryland football. But I do believe that Iverson Howard is our best commit yet, and a lot of the recruiting websites believe that as well. If you go through some of our commits, he is probably the highest guy rated on 247 when you go through everybody, whether it's even Jet White or Carlton Smith or some of the recent guys we've gotten like JT Tagar and some of these other guys that we've gotten. Dante Rector, who we're going to talk about another day, who recently committed. Brahim Battles. Between all these different guys, I think that Iverson Howard is our top rated guy when you go through the 247, and if you go through on 3 as well, and then of course Rivals 2. Iverson Howard is ranked pretty highly on 247 composite rankings, and I still don't really understand the difference between their base player rating and the composite rating. But on the composite rating, they have him ranked 392, so that's pretty high, and they have him as a 4-star, and they also have him as the 30th ranked running back in the class of 2025 and the 10th best player in Maryland. So Iverson Howard, when I look at that and I look at the ratings on 3, they have him as a top 250 kid. Anytime a guy's in your top 400, top 350, anywhere around that, rated as a 4-star, he is probably a pretty good player. And then when you go through some of his other offers, you're going to see that he's also has a really good offer list, and definitely one of the best offer lists that you'll see out of all the Maryland commits for sure. I don't know an offer list that can get much better than this. Just to name a couple of names, it says Georgia has offered him. Florida has offered him. It says that Miami, Michigan State, Oregon, Penn State has offered, Cuse has offered, Wisconsin has offered some really good programs, Virginia Tech, some of the local teams have offered. And so when you look at it, it's a really solid roster look, offer list. When you see Georgia, you see Florida State, when you see Miami, when you see Oregon, when you see Penn State, teams that Maryland hasn't normally gotten and beaten out. Usually we tend to lose to Penn State. Even for a lot of the local kids, we lose to Penn State quite a bit in recruiting rankings. And if Georgia really wants somebody, it's tough to beat them out. And I'm not saying Georgia really wanted Iverson Howard, but overall, I think he's definitely on their list. I mean, they had offered him. And so some of these schools, Oregon, that's a tough school to beat out. Ole Miss, I haven't even mentioned. Michigan, Michigan runs the ball a lot. And I saw a video about Michigan wanting him. And so when I look at it and I look at his offer list and I look at his rating and I look at his film's a different thing, which I'll talk to you about in a second. He looks like he's so far, I think, our biggest commitment in the 2025 class for Maryland football. And for Maryland football to land a guy like this in the DMV area, repeat, the DMV area is so important for us to be able to get guys that are actually from the DMV area. And Quince Orchard is a perfect example of a school right in the DMV. I have said it. If we want to take the recruiting to the next step for Maryland football, you're going to have to get a guy like this, a guy like Iverson Howard, a good 4-star player. Maybe he's not quite like a really high-end 4-star, but a solid 4-star on multiple websites, and he's a guy that is a top 10 player in Maryland. You can't let those type of guys slip out of your backyard. You have to hold on to some of these guys, and I think that's exactly what we did with Iverson Howard. We recruited him hard, and I think that he's going to be a really big player for us down the road. And I think he takes the lead spot probably for our top recruit in the 2025 class. But when you turn on the film, kid's explosive. That's right away you notice kid is explosive, can run. And sometimes it's weird because you can't really tell how fast the guy is until you see how he's just beating angles from the opposing team. And sure, some of the kids that he's going against aren't going to be Division I football players, of course, but that's just about every recruit that you're going to look at. But when I'm watching him just go by guys, and even though they try and get him and they try and tackle him, they try and bring him down, he's able to fight through contact, and I'm watching them just miss on angles. It looks like their guys are taking bad angles, but I was like, okay, are they taking bad angles, or is Iverson Howard just really fast? And I came with he's pretty dang fast and explosive. And so he's a guy that, I don't know, maybe if you guys watch the film, you'll have a different take, but I'm watching and I'm like, okay, it looks like he's going pretty fast, but I'm not like, oh my gosh, this kid's like going super fast. But then when I watch everyone else's angles and how they try and get him and how they try and tackle him, I'm like, yeah, Iverson Howard's super explosive, and he has a chance to be the next really good back for Maryland football. And we've had a couple of good ones over the years, and I think Howard is in line to be that type of guy for Maryland football. One thing's for sure, Maryland loves to get guys reps early on in their career. When we look about just about everybody, when we look at Colby McDonald was able to he's gotten some reps, even though last year he wasn't technically the starter, or even a lot of the times probably wasn't even considered the second string. And we like to play a whole lot of different guys, a lot of different running backs get carries, a lot of different types of players get touches. And if you're young and you're ready to go, they're going to give you the ball some. You might not get the workload, you might not get all the carries early on, but you're going to get sprinkled in for sure. And so when I look at a guy like this and Iverson Howard and his explosive ability, and I think his versatility with his game, he can catch the ball, he can do all these different things. I think he's a guy that we are going to definitely get the ball to early. He's a guy that's going to be able to make an impact pretty early for Maryland football. And Roman Hemby's not here forever. I think sometimes you kind of forget that certain guys aren't here forever. And we've been really excited about Nolan Ray and what he brings. And Iverson Howard is kind of similar to Nolan Ray in a lot of ways. And I think they're going to be able to be a really good 1-2 punch, along with Deshaun as well. We can't forget about two in that running back room. That was also a 4-star out of St. Francis on a lot of websites for a while. So we have a really good running back stable that I feel really confident in, that is going to be a really good kind of core running backs for a while. It's not a position group that I'm worried about. And you can't forget, in the 2025 class, we also have Bud Combs is also in a running back in the 2025 class that we have from DeMatha. And so we are recruiting running back pretty well. And I think that's going to be a high level position for us for the next couple of years for Maryland football. And I think Coach Loxley has done a good job of recruiting the run game. And a lot of it's going to depend on the offensive line and how they block. I always say that. But I think this kid, Iverson, really is one of the best recruits so far in our 2025 class. But I don't think we are close to done. I think this class has a chance to be a really solid class that Coach Loxley needs. I think we need a really good influx of talent. I think our 24 class was pretty good, and I think our 2023 class was pretty good. And I say pretty good and then you know what I mean? It's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's excellent. I wouldn't say it's great. And when I say great, I don't expect a number one recruiting class, but I mean great for Maryland. Maybe getting in the top 25 recruiting class, something like that. But it's been pretty good. And so if we want to take the next level as a team, we have to continue to recruit guys exactly like Iverson. And this 2025 class has a chance to add a couple more of those players. So we'll see how the dominoes fall, but I like the way that it has started for Maryland football. Maryland football is not the only isn't the only Maryland team to land a new commit. Maryland basketball also just landed a new commit. I will talk about that after this ad from eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships, and is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. So Maryland basketball gets a new commit that is quite interesting. And I don't want to say it's underwhelming for Maryland basketball, but it definitely feels a little bit underwhelming in my opinion. So the Terps go into the portal and use their final spot, which is a thing that we're going to talk about, on this kid, Jalen Young from Memphis. And it's an interesting kind of commit for the Terps because Jalen Young hasn't really done too much at Memphis. And there's actually quite a bit to talk about with this kid. He just didn't do much at Memphis. He's a 6'2" guard who actually was at first committed to Vermont, which was interesting, but then decommitted to come to Maryland. But this year he averaged 2.2 points, 1.3 rebounds, and 0.9 assists per game in 27 appearances as a redshirt junior at Memphis. And it's like, okay, I understand that we needed one more spot in the portal, and I really don't mean to talk bad about Jalen Young, but I'm going to be honest. He hasn't had much production, like 2.2 points per game, 1.3 rebounds. It's like, okay, like, what do we kind of do with this? And there's different kind of ways you can take this. He's a guard. He's 6'2". If you guys remember, we did have an injury to Jahari Long, who could be out for the entire year next year, which is actually hurts a lot because I was looking forward to Jahari Long having a pretty solid impact, and I thought he brought our team to like a good team with a good amount of depth. Like if we have Jahari Long, we have a lot of depth on this Maryland team. And so you kind of look at this kid as a potential kind of replacement for Jahari Long in terms of he can bring some depth. But at the same time, I'm like, is he a guy that we felt the need to pounce on? I don't know. And I don't think I would have personally pounced on him. I probably would have been more patient, seeing what else you could get. But I mean, I trust Kevin Willard, I think, in what he's doing. I just don't see a guy here that is going to probably give us a lot of production. He might not even play. Think about our backcourt right now. It's absolutely loaded with a lot of different types of players when you think about our backcourt right now. You think about we bring back Jameer Young, or excuse me, not Jameer Young. Jameer Young's gone. The Jalen Young, Jameer Young thing also is another thing that's kind of throwing me off. How similar those two names are. If he can play anything like Jameer Young, we're going to be in a good spot. But we bring back Deshaun Harris-Smith at the guard spot, and then we went into the portal and got Jacoby Gillespie. You think about Rodney Rice as a guard. You think about Selton Miguel as a guard. You think about Chance Stevens is coming back from his injury is a guard. Malachi Palmer, the freshman, is kind of a guard. And so you look at it and you're like, where does he kind of fit in? And I know you have one spot, but I feel like you could have been patient with this last spot. And it's not like he has a ton of eligibility remaining. He doesn't. And so we're looking at this guy as a guy that probably comes in and I don't really see Jalen Young playing a ton really at all for the Terps. Before Memphis, he went to UCF, played in 33 games there. He started in 12 actually. Average 4.5 points, 2.2 rebounds, and 2 assists. So, again, nothing special, even though he was starting a lot of games. So, it's like, how exactly do we approach this? How exactly do I look at this? I don't know how else to say it, but it feels underwhelming to me. It just does. I don't want to be mean. I don't want to – I know the kid's probably a good guy and everything. But for our last roster spot and chance to really take this team to like, okay, I'm excited. Like this team looks really good to another level where it's like, oh, this team's scary. Like this team might be one of the best teams in the country next year. We went from kind of like that to like, okay, we're still really good and we have a lot of potential next year, but he doesn't really elevate how I look at this team. And that's just my honest, truthful opinion. I hopefully he comes in and proves me wrong and is able to kind of play at a high level and maybe provide some backup minutes and just provide some veteran type of presence. I'm not expecting like 15 points per game or anything like that, but just some type of veteran presence, some leadership. But I think there's a reason I want to say he was committed to Vermont. And that's no kind of shot at Vermont. Vermont's probably a cool spot to go to school, but the difference between Vermont and Maryland in terms of just the basketball play, purely basketball play, I mean, it doesn't come close. Maryland is just a different type of program, and all the kind of power for conferences nowadays, or I guess you could say also like the Big East and stuff like that. All the big-time basketball conferences, the conference at Vermont's is not a very good one. So the fact that I'm not sure what he had coming out of the portal, but if he committed to Vermont and then was willing to switch to Maryland, I'm guessing he didn't have a lot. And so that's kind of how I come to say that this is a little bit underwhelming just because it feels like we got a guy that hasn't done much, and it doesn't feel like a guy that really even – I don't see being in our rotation right now. I have heard he's a decent shooter and everything, but I just don't see really a spot for him. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's better than I think. Maybe this last spot was just kind of, we needed just a veteran guy in there. We didn't need a lot more than that. But it's going to be interesting. The Jalen Young thing throws me off. The fact that his name is Jalen Young makes me kind of feel weird because it's like every time I say his name, I'm like, am I saying Jameer Young or Jalen Young? In my head, it's like getting switched up, but it's kind of funny. But like I said, if he can play anything close to what Jameer Young is, then we're going to be in a good spot. But obviously, we're not expecting that. But I think that it's a deep guard room, so it's going to be hard to play, as well as he just hasn't provided much kind of statistics to back really anything up, even though he's played a decent amount of years now. He actually started in community college. That's one thing I forgot to mention, and he dominated there before making kind of the step up. Maryland signs a huge deal with Under Armour to continue that sponsorship. I will talk about that right now. So Maryland's been an Under Armour school for a while now, and Maryland just re-signed with Under Armour, I should say, which I think honestly is very good for Maryland football, basketball, the athletics in totality, to be completely honest, with this humongous deal with Under Armour. Of course, you know Maryland's connection with Under Armour. I think most of you guys know it, that the head of Under Armour, Plank, is a Maryland grad, and so that's a big reason why Maryland's an Under Armour school. I'm sure that we've kind of gotten a lot of benefits from being an Under Armour school, and Plank being the head of Under Armour, because it's like we've gotten all these different types of things. You think about the jersey combos and these different kind of facilities and different things. Under Armour has been definitely a big part of that, especially when you look at the jerseys and the different kind of drip. So a lot of the kids say today, and a lot of the new gear, and that's a big thing for these guys. Like that's an important part of recruiting, like getting these guys in the right kind of gear, getting these guys in the cool gear, and having kind of a different sponsorship. A lot of guys have Nike as their sponsor, and of course that's not like a bad sponsor to have at all. Nike, you could argue, might be the best, but having something different like Under Armour, one that not everybody has. Sure, some colleges have Under Armour as a sponsor, but Maryland is really probably, when you think about Under Armour in terms of college football, college basketball, you think about Maryland and what Maryland, the type of jerseys we get. We get so many different jerseys. Like Maryland's the type of team where somebody would use Maryland in the new NCAA game just because of the jerseys. That's how cool our jerseys are, and there's so many different selections. I remember playing some NCAA 14 and going through it and being like, there's so many cool selections, and that's important to the recruits, honestly. Obviously, it's not like the end-all, be-all, but that's part of the entire thing is, those jerseys are really cool, and they get it in black and yellow and red and white and gold and all these different things, and the recruits look at that and they're like, that's cool. Then they see all these different Under Armour stuff that you're going to get and all these different things. It matters, and I've talked about it. Recruiting is the name of the game in college football. If you can't recruit, you're not going to win games. And so for them to re-sign with Under Armour, which I think Under Armour has done a great job with this Maryland program, I think it's an underrated story that not a lot of people are probably wanting to talk about, but I think it's a thing that's important for Maryland football, for Maryland basketball, for Maryland baseball, whatever it is. The Under Armour signing is a big thing for all of it. I really do believe for all of it. It's a 12-year deal. I forgot to mention it's a 12-year deal for Maryland football. So it extends us through 2036, and so that's gonna definitely give us a while with Under Armour. And when our time is up, I kind of expect us to redo it again. I don't really see us why we would need to go anywhere else besides Under Armour, to be completely honest. And it's worth $98 million. So 12 years, $98 million to stay with Under Armour. I think it's a pretty cool thing for Maryland football, for Maryland basketball, baseball, lacrosse, what other Maryland sport you can think of, softball, whatever it may be. It's pretty cool that we kind of signed with Under Armour again. And I really do believe it matters in terms of recruiting. And then you also just want your guys to have good gear. I think having appealing jerseys, having all these different cool jerseys, and having all these different cool gear and all these different things that come with Under Armour, and Under Armour being like a focus of us. Like you can tell that Under Armour focuses on us. Some of the colleges they sponsor, they don't focus on. You can tell they just kind of put out a jersey and that's so be it. They really try with this Maryland team. And so I'm glad that we didn't have to switch to somewhere else and it'd be like, we're just one of the bunch of Nike schools. Like, we're the Oregon of Under Armour. How Oregon is to Nike, we are that of Under Armour. And that's a pretty cool thing to be. And I think that really helps this team. And it's an underrated type of thing that not a lot of people are going to talk about, but it is something that helps. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.